What's going on, Packer fans? Welcome back to the Pack a Day podcast, a very rare no hoodie, no hat episode of the Pack a Day podcast. I'm your host, Andy Herman. You can follow me on Twitter at Andy Herman NFL. Today, I want to do a grab bag, a little bit of a Twitter Q&A, if you will. Had some great people ask some great questions out on Twitter, so I figure not a ton of topics. I know Brian Gutekunst talked, but wasn't a ton to take away from it, if we're being honest. And until we get Rodgers news and until there's additional transactions, there's not a ton going on, but I think there's still some really interesting questions that got asked that I'm really excited to cover. So let's kick things off right away. And let's start with @sledge_slammer, who asks, what should our expectations for the season be in these four situations? And the four situations he gives are Rodgers stays, Adams walks, Rodgers retires, and Adams stays. Both of them leave or both of them stay. I think it's an interesting question because I think, to some extent, obviously expectations are going to change depending on which one of those scenarios happens. So let's start with the first one. Rodgers stays and Davante Adams walks away. I know a lot of people, and again, I think this is maybe a fairly unlikely one. I don't know that Rodgers is too stoked to come back without Davante Adams, but Brian Gutekunst did mention that these are two separate situations and maybe there's an avenue where this exists. To me, if Rodgers comes back with or without Davante Adams, they're competing for a Super Bowl. Listen, I don't think the NFC is that great. Now, it's tough to say that right now because we haven't seen the draft, we haven't seen free agency, we haven't seen trades. Who knows? Maybe some team in the NFC completely goes like all Rams, right? And gets a legit starting quarterback and ends up with a wide receiver like Odell Beckham and edge rusher like Von Miller, picks up some free agents and so on and so forth, and all of a sudden they're a top contending team in the NFC. Who knows? But as of right now, the Rams are going to be really good. Again, I would assume the 49ers, a lot's going to depend on Trey Lance. Who knows what Seattle's going to look like? Russell Wilson should still be good, but that team's looked like a shell of itself the last couple seasons. Arizona's going through drama. Dallas should be okay, but like everyone else, I don't know. I'm not afraid of anyone. So if Rodgers is back, they're competing to go to a Super Bowl, regardless of whether Adams is back or not. And I talked about it the other day. I think there's a real legitimate argument to be made of take this in a 1 year vacuum, right? This isn't a 3 or 4 year situation. If you're willing to spend, 25 to 30 million on Davante Adams, even if that's like some of that is pushed out money, if you're willing to spend that, imagine what you could get back or what players you could keep and maybe add some players for 25 to 30 million. Add on top of that, what if you could get a first or a first and a third or something like that in exchange for Davante Adams? And you can make a strong argument that in a 1 year vacuum, moving on from Adams and using those resources, maybe a first round pick and 30 extra million to spend, could actually be used in a lot of better ways than just one player. I totally get wanting to keep Adams, but regardless of which situation you go there, if Rodgers is back, this team is mostly intact, and even Adams is gone, but the rest of your team is together and you have some money to spend and maybe an extra draft pick or two, I think you can legitimately still make a case where that's an all-in sort of proposition and that Green Bay is still competing for a Super Bowl. The next is Aaron Rodgers retires and Davante Adams stays. To me, that's the weirdest of all scenarios. And I know it seems like the Packers are all in on keeping Adams regardless of whether Rodgers is back or not. And I also understand if Jordan Love's going to be your quarterback, you might as well give him weapons to see if he can be the guy or not. But man, a 30-year-old wide receiver at 30 mil per year, when you know you're not going to be winning a Super Bowl with Jordan Love these next few seasons, that is a tough pill for me to swallow. So in that situation, I think if everything's perfect and Jordan Love's your quarterback, I think you can still compete in the NFC North. I really do. Unless Jordan Love is just a train wreck, right? But if he's, even remotely okay, based on the talent that's on this team right now, and you're bringing Adams back, you're assuming other guys are going to be back, I think you're making a run at the NFC North. Maybe you come up short. Maybe you're end up 7-10 or something, or 8-9, and it just ends up a little bit short. But I think they could easily be 9-8, 10-7 in the right, if things would fall the right way. And maybe you could end up winning the North in that situation. But for the most part, that's the one I would be least interested in. And then both Rodgers and Adams leave. You're looking at rebuild, right? In that situation, I think you're probably looking at 4 to 6 wins, maybe 7 if things go, well, even though that would probably be the worst case because you get a worse draft pick and so on and so forth. But that's a full rebuild. And then both Rodgers and Adams stay. Again, you're going all in. You're hoping to win a Super Bowl in that situation. And then our very own Pack-A-Day podcast, Ross Uglum, and of course, Packer Report fame as well, he asked a similar question. Do you view Rodgers Adams as a package deal? He said, I personally would move on from neither or both, but not one or the other. I think one of them leaving triggers a full roster reset for me. To me, it's yes and no. To me, if Rodgers is gone, then to me, it's time to say goodbye to Davante as well. I'm not a huge believer in bringing back Davante, as I just mentioned. On the flip side, again, I disagree on the other side. I think if Adams is gone and you can't sign him, but you can still bring Rodgers back, I still think there's ways to spend that $30 million you were going to give Adams to build a really good team this year. And potentially, if you can make it work, do a sign and trade and maybe get back some assets and resources in that capacity as well. All right, next up is Sadar Riemann, I don't know, at Sadar Riemann. Either way, he said, Sad Area Man. That's what it was. At Sad Area Man asks, what tier Packers fan are you if you're not all that excited about another year of all in? And I'm so glad somebody asked this question, and I've covered this a little bit in the past as well. Everyone has every right to be their own fan and cheer for their own thing and put whatever level of time, effort, energy, and intensity into the season and into the team as they want. That doesn't necessarily make you a better or worse fan. People have a lot going on in their lives, and this may be different priorities. The priority of the Packers for me is probably a little bit different because I have to, I'm recording podcasts and doing videos and writing about the team and so on and so forth, right? But my fandom has changed exponentially over the years. As I've mentioned in the past, when I was younger, if there was an NFC player in the Pro Bowl, I wanted to watch the Pro Bowl and was all in that the NFC better win the Pro Bowl. If there was an exhibition game and the Packers were playing in the preseason versus the Bengals or whatever, that was a huge game. Like, the Packers better win, and I was cheering hard like that game mattered. And certainly regular season and anything else was do or die. And everything mattered, and every play was me like just living on emotions. And if there was a bad play, I would freak out. If somebody said the Packers were struggling, I would get upset. I always thought the Packers could come back and win. Like, it was an extreme fandom. And then, as I grew up, I realized exhibition games didn't matter. Pro Bowl doesn't matter, at least to me. Some of those things were just, mostly irrelevant. But regular season games, I was still like, a win or a loss would fluctuate. Like, my entire persona would fluctuate whether they won or lost or not. That's, early college, right? Late high school. That's how I was, and now it's just so much different, right? I'm constantly watching. I don't necessarily ebb and flow with a win or a loss. I'm watching to see how the Packers are playing overall. Now, clearly, you need enough wins to get in the playoffs, but I'm constantly evaluating them on, all right, are they playing good enough football to win come playoff time? And they could be 13-4, and that answer could be no. They could be, 10-7, and that answer could be yes. So, the Packers' last Super Bowl when they were the 6th seed, right? They've had a lot better opportunities with better seeds since then and have crapped the bed in spectacular fashion in a variety of ways. The wins and the losses and, those sort of things are much less relevant to me. Obviously, exhibition doesn't matter. It matters to me evaluating the players, but not the score or the outcome. But everyone's on a different walk with their fandom. And that's totally cool. If you're do or die in an exhibition game and you're all in on it and you're cheering up and down for, some 5th string running back who's gone over 100 yards or something, awesome. By all means, I love it. If you're checking out in the offseason and just say, hey, call me when the regular season starts. I don't care who they draft. I don't care who they sign. I don't care what their past was. I don't care anything. I just want to be there week 1 at the game or watch week 1 and hope that they win. That's awesome. Or anything in between, right? So there's no tiers of fandom. Do your own thing, be yourself, enjoy the Packers, enjoy the football, enjoy the game, because at the end of the day, this is entertainment and it's meant to take our minds off of all the other crappy stuff that's going on in the world. So if you want to be all in and extreme on one end or not and be on the other, by all means. If you're listening to this, you're probably fairly extreme. But however you want to fan, go out and fan. All right, next up, at Ben Saylor. With the projected depth of the edge class, do you think that they'll wait until the 2nd or 3rd round for that position? And if so, which position group do you think they'll most likely target in round 1? I have not gotten deep into draft. There were a lot of people who wanted to ask me draft questions. I'll get there, I promise. But I will say this, that the edge rusher position in round 1 is very deep, and I think it's going to be a position that Green Bay is going to be very interested in. And if I were just like betting today on what position Green Bay grabs in round 1, I would very much be betting and leaning towards edge rusher. Green Bay is going to go premium position, young player, talented player with high upside and highly athletic. And there's a lot of those at the edge rusher position. So nothing set in stone, but if I were a betting man today, I would say edge rusher in round 1 would probably be my bet, even though there's a lot of opportunities for a lot of different positions. But where edge is at in this draft, I like the opportunity for Green Bay to potentially end up with one in round 1, or maybe trade down a little bit and end up with one in early round 2. That could be an option as well. All right, at Mike_Kremer89, does Davante Adams sign an extension for anything less than $30 million per year? Yes, I think it'll be less than $30 million per year. It won't be much less. I think it might be around 27, 28 million, maybe 29, but I don't think it hits 30. So I think it's very close, but I don't think it's quite 30 would be my guess. I think Adams and his agent are well aware that the Packers have the opportunity to use the franchise tag and make things complicated. So I think if they want a longer term deal, they're going to have to come in under 30 million per year, and that's what I would expect at this given moment. All right, at Zglix says, with the current coaching staff, assuming Aaron Jones leaves after the 2022 season, do you envision them continuing with a 50-50 backfield approach? And do you have any sense on whether Kylan Hill could fit that role? Yes, I do think that if Aaron Jones is gone after this year, I think they would continue that sort of approach. And I think if Kylan Hill can come back from his ACL, him and A.J. Dillon could absolutely do that. Also high on Patrick Taylor. I think he's a really good running back as well and has the ability to make a name for himself on this team. So Green Bay's really set at the running back position. I think they'll probably go in. I don't think they're going to add much, via draft or anything like that. Maybe they take a flyer on a late round guy if it's the right guy and he's just the highest on their board. But I would expect them to go into the season with Jones, Dillon, and Patrick Taylor with Kylan Hill on the PUP list, and then bring Hill back when he is ready to play. But then in the next year, I would expect both Taylor and Kylan Hill to be ready to take those snaps from Aaron Jones, and A.J. Dillon to be the guy in 2023. All right, next up is Kawango2424 and says, why isn't Sterling Sharpe in the Pro Football Hall of Fame? And my answer is I have no freaking clue. Obviously, he is more than deserving to be a Hall of Famer. And maybe more obviously, the answer is due to longevity, right? Had he played maybe even 1, but definitely 2, 3, 4 more years, he would have been a clear-cut, no question Hall of Famer. It just is what it is. And unfortunately, his career getting cut short due to injury is the only reason he's not in right now. However, that being said, he very much should be in still. And now that Leroy Butler is in, I think there was like a priority, right? Everyone from a Packers standpoint wanted Jerry Kramer to get in. Once Kramer got in, we moved on to Leroy Butler. Now Butler's in, and I think it's very clear it is now time to move on for Packer fans to Sterling Sharpe and to get him very clearly, in the Hall of Fame, because he very clearly and evidently deserves to be there based on his career. All right, at Ross Whitman says, Andrew Brandt tweeted today that any extension with Rodgers would contain an out after 2022, which he negotiated last year. This seems dubious. Wouldn't any extension be predicated on that out being eliminated? I thought it was an interesting worded tweet from Andrew as well. I don't think that, just because Rodgers signs another extension doesn't mean that, Green Bay would have to give him an out in his next contract. I don't think that's apples to apples. However, I think it's mostly semantics and it doesn't really matter, because I think as long as Rodgers is back in Green Bay, this will continue to be a yearly thing where Rodgers is going to want to say, hey, if you're going to want to keep me, you're going to have to make me the highest paid guy in football. I'm going to have the opportunity to, move on or, force a retirement or force a trade if I want. I think this will continue to be a 1 year and reevaluate for Rodgers no matter what, whether that's retire, trade, etc. I think that's the way it's going to go. So whether or not there's an official out in the contract, Rodgers is at the point in his career where he can say, hey, if you don't want to, trade me, I'll retire. And Green Bay, of course, is going to say, fine, we'll trade you and we'll get stuff in return because we can't get nothing for you in return. So Rodgers holds all the cards at this point. And whether there's an actual out in the contract or not, Rodgers will effectively have that because he can always threaten retirement. All right, next up is at Corey Rommel. He said, should Green Bay make a change at the free safety position and then have Darnell Savage play the star role? I am very, very much anti this idea. First of all, Savage just needs to get back to the basics at safety because he has the ability to be a good player, and he was not a good player a season ago. I do not believe Star would be better. In fact, I believe Star would be way worse. Savage is not a clean player in coverage. I don't think whether it's zone or man, you want him manned up against slot receivers. I believe that would be a constant and consistent mismatch and one that you do not want Green Bay, having to go against. Like, I would much rather have Chandon Sullivan, who, is not exactly a star, no pun intended, at the position. I would much rather have him in coverage than I would Darnell Savage. Furthermore, right now, maybe you have Amos back. I think you probably do. But what are you going to put more Henry Black on the field? I don't think that's answering. So maybe you could get a safety in the draft or maybe a decent one in free agency. But to me, your best lineup is still going to be with Amos and Savage at safety, and you just need to get Darnell Savage back to playing the caliber of football that he showed in his first couple years, and frankly, not what he put on the field this last season. All right, at Nath Packers says, with the presumption that Rodgers is back, do you think that could factor in how they approach the draft? Possibly more NFL-ready prospects, but not with high-end upside that they often take in the draft. Gutekunst mentioned this today and basically said no. I think the answer is yes, to some extent. I think early in the draft, especially, again, given where they're at in the franchise, they have to realize that they need a couple guys that could help them this season. Now, if they have a super talented player like another, Rashawn Gary potential situation presents itself, I think it'd be tough for Goody to pass on it. But if it's a choose your poison, like you've got two players graded very much the same, and one maybe has a little bit upside, one is going to help you more this year, I think they may go the one that helps you this year. And I know there's guys coming off torn ACLs and things like that. I just find it very difficult to believe that Goody would take somebody that may miss half or all of the season due to injury, especially early in the draft, knowing that this is such an all-in season. So it may not if they have a high grade on one of those guys and he's the best player on their board, I think it's just in Goody's nature to take that player, right? But if all things created equal, I find it hard to believe they're going to take somebody that's going to take 2 to 3 years to develop, or that maybe has coming off a torn ACL and may not be ready for the season. I just think it's going to be tough with where Green Bay's at as a franchise right now. All right, Brent Schoonever says, how long will Jordan Love get to prove he's the guy? And Wendell FP says, will the Packers exercise Jordan Love's fifth-year option if he doesn't play in 2022? I think these are very interesting questions. I don't think there's an easy answer. I have gone on record as saying, and I still believe it to be the case, I don't think Jordan Love is guaranteed anything. If Rodgers retires now, if Rodgers retires after the season, if Rodgers retires a season after that, I don't think Jordan Love is guaranteed to be the guy. He's going to have to prove himself. I don't think Matt LaFleur or anyone in this organization is ready to hand over the quarterback job of the Green Bay Packers just because somebody was picked in the first round. I just really don't. So if Jordan Love doesn't prove that he's ready, now if he's, maybe Green Bay brings in competition and Love is just by default the best guy, right? So be it. But I don't think that's guaranteed. I know that, again, Andrew Brandt has gone multiple times to saying when you pick somebody in the first round, they're eventually going to get their chance. I think in a way that Gutekunst in the front office knew that Jordan Love was always a bit of a wild card. He was always a bit of a gamble. You know what? You know who else were gambles? Jair Alexander with his height, Rashawn Gary with his, just ball of clay upside and not really producing all the time at Michigan. Like, they've taken a lot of high risk, high reward. Eric Stokes is another. Had some very big flaws in his game and in his tape, but he's like a 4'2", 40, Georgia, 6 foot tall, like perfect corner, right? They've taken big swings at first round prospects, super high talent, have the ability to be all pro caliber players. That's what they've taken. And I think they know that with all of these, there's some risk involved. And I don't think Jordan Love's any different. I think if any of them ends up not turning out, I don't think they just automatically get a spot. So we'll see. But I think, if Jordan Love gets a shot, I think they'll give him a season. I don't think he necessarily gets more than that. Like I said, I don't even know that he is guaranteed anything at this point. So we'll see. And as whether or not Green Bay would pick up his fifth-year option, I think it's just they're going to have to see more of him before they make that decision. And that might just be in practice, right? We'll see. But, as of right now, I think that'd be a tough pill to swallow for Green Bay either way, right? It'd be a tough pill to swallow for Green Bay to say no, and I think it'd be a tough pill for Green Bay to swallow to say yes. So I think they're going to try to gather as much information on Love as possible and make the most educated decision they possibly can when they need to ultimately make that decision. All right, last two fun ones. At drawing less, some of them like that. I don't know. You get to choose one forever: chicken, beef, pork, or seafood. I can easily get rid of pork or seafood. It's between chicken and beef. I will take chicken. For the most part, what you can do with beef, you can do with chicken. It's not, I'm going to miss steak for sure. I'm going to miss cheeseburger for sure. But I'd still get like an Impossible Whopper. I'm pretty happy with that. I can get chicken sandwiches. I can make chicken tacos. I can put chicken on my pizza. I just have like veggie pizza. I feel like I can get away with a lot more of the beef products without beef than I can the chicken products without chicken. So I'm going to keep chicken. It's a little bit leaner, a little bit better. So I'm going to go chicken, but not an easy decision, but definitely between chicken and beef. And then at Call Me Matub, of course, Leave It to Matub said, would you rather sweat mayonnaise or poop softballs? This is very difficult because mayonnaise is, I don't even like saying the word. That's how much I dislike mayonnaise. If I get mayonnaise in my mouth or smell mayonnaise, I will literally gag. So, man, I don't know, Matub. I don't want to poop a softball. That just doesn't sound fun. So I'm going to figure out a way to sweat mayonnaise, but it's literally going to ruin the entirety of the rest of my life. Obviously, both of those things would, but I despise mayonnaise with all my being, with literally all of my being. So I'm gonna sweat mayo, but man, it is a close call, and I just have no intentions of pooping a softball. So that's my final answer. I hate it. It's a good question, but I'm not pooping softballs. And with that, that's going to do it for me today. Thank you so much for joining me. You know now a little bit more about me than I'm sure you ever needed to know, but I appreciate you joining me. I'll be right back here tomorrow. Thank you for all of you who have asked questions. I may do another one this week because I got even more great questions, so we'll see. But until next time, and as always, go Pack Go.